going on, Mayo Gang? Boaz here, and what is it with us reviewing or going over gas blowback airsoft guns during the winter? I don't understand. And why are airsoft companies coming out with gas blowback rifles and stuff during the winter? It's so weird. But outside of that little tidbit, today we're going to be looking at a very interesting looking gas blowback rifle that has certainly blown me away. This guy right here kind of flew under the radar for a while, and so we were surprised to actually get our hands on one of these and finally get to test one out. What we're looking at today is going to be the KLI SR4 CO2 gas blowback rifle. So why are we saying such great things about this KLI gas blowback M4? It looks like your typical gas blowback M4, but it's made from KLI, which if you've ever shot some of the previous airsoft guns like the Baba Yaga and the Baba Yaga 2, those things kick really hard. So naturally, KLI, they started out with their smaller airsoft pistols. Now they're moving on to the full-size gas blowback rifle, and you could expect this guy to kick really, really hard. Starting out here from the tip, you're getting a full 14.5 inch carbine length outer barrel. So, this is primarily designed for that outdoor usage, outdoor play. And you get a nice metal M-LOK handguard with M-LOK on the 3 o'clock, 9 o'clock, and 6 o'clock. And you have Picatinny here on the top. And you have a little section of Picatinny here on the bottom. Now, I'm not super critical about how the handguard itself looks. I think it looks pretty all right. I think the problem is with KLI, I don't know why you did this, made the handguard so short. I wish you just kind of extended it all the way here to the tip, for that modern M4 aesthetic, And you get a forged aluminum receiver set. That's right, it's a forged aluminum. So it's not cast, it's not molded, it is a forged aluminum receiver group, which is probably the first time I've ever seen a forged receiver group coming out of a stock gun, which is pretty wild. And then you have a standard metal buffer tube and LE stock with the standard A2 pistol grip. So some other interesting tidbits about the KLI SR4 is that you're gonna get a nice ambidextrous sling loop here, so you can attach your slings a lot easier. You have a very interesting looking ambidextrous charging handle, which again, looks very interesting, not something that you're used to seeing every day. It's just the way that it's designed. But you also are getting a full travel monolith at the top rail for whatever optics or accessories you want to put on this bad boy. I will say I was a little disappointed that they didn't extend the handguard all the way to the tip, but at least they gave us the monolith at the top rail, so I guess it kind of evens it out a little bit in my opinion. But on top of the handguard and the receiver is gonna be a very interesting set of chunky iron sights. These boys are kind of chunky, but if you look closely, they have, these are fiber optic and they kind of have this interesting ring design to them. In today's day and age, who the heck is running iron sights in airsoft, dude? You're gonna yeet this and you're gonna wanna put in a really cool optic, okay? But outside of that, another interesting detail is that on the lower receiver group over here, you have standard M4 style fire controls, but if you look carefully, they put anti-walk / anti-roll pins inside the lower receiver group for you. And so I think it's because they know how hard this gun is gonna kick, and it kicks so much harder compared to other gas blowback rifles out there. I think they decided just to do you the favor and just include those anti-walk pins already straight from the factory. So huge ups to KLI for doing that. Internally is where things get pretty interesting for the KLI SR4 because this is a completely CO2 dedicated platform. So they designed the SR4 to run exclusively on CO2 from the ground up. So naturally, you're gonna want to have some pretty beefed up internal parts. And one thing that really surprised all of us here is that when we opened this guy up, first thing we noticed is that it comes with a steel bolt carrier group, which is wild. Generally, with other gas blowback M4s out there, it's either going to be made out of your typical mystery meat metal, sometimes aluminum on the higher quality stuff, but you never really want to go with a steel bolt just because of how heavy it is. Generally, when you're tuning and building gas blowback M4s, you want to have a lightweight bolt, so that way you get more efficiency. Not with this guy. This guy wants to kick you in the shoulder, so you get that really nice heavy bolt carrier group. Now, moving down towards the rear, inside you get a pretty stiff buffer spring, definitely a lot stiffer than a lot of the other stuff I've seen out there, plus a nice metal buffer as well. So with all that combined, you're definitely gonna get quite the kick when you're shooting this bad boy. Now, if you're wondering about the hop-up, this system is very, I guess, I can't really put my finger on it. It is a completely proprietary system. So I'll get that out of the way first. It's completely proprietary, but it's like kind of loosely, in a way, based off of like the Western Arms and also GHK platform, but not close enough to completely mesh with each other. But one thing I think that's interesting that borrows from like that Western Arms design is that the hop-up will be adjusted underneath the outer barrel. This is nothing new. Like, this is what I had to do when I was running a Western Arms gas blowback M4 for years. But I think KLI decided to make things a little bit more convenient, so you can take this quick takedown lever here on the handguard. You can actually undo it. You could slide the handguard out. You can adjust your hop-up with your finger, slide your handguard back on, lock it back into place. But if you want to maybe replace this with an aftermarket handguard, you're more than able to do so. Just keep in mind that you might have to like stick a small skinny like hex key and adjust your hop-up that way, because that's something that I had to do for many years. So the good thing though about this hop-up design is that it's pretty much like a set and forget kind of situation. So once you kind of set it, you don't ever really have to worry about the hop coming loose over time. The airsoft guns will live or die by the quality of the gas blowback magazine. And this guy is a very interesting one at that. So the magazine itself is going to take not one, but 2 CO2 cartridges. So it's using a dual cartridge system. You press this little button here on the side of the magazine and you can unsleeve it basically, and it'll reveal spaces for you to put 2 12-gram CO2 cartridges, and you'll load them how you traditionally or normally would load CO2 into your airsoft gun. Because it's running on 2 CO2 cartridges, the immediate benefit is that you're gonna have a lot more CO2 to work with, so it's gonna kick a lot harder. Most importantly, it is going to be exceptionally good during the cold winter months. So this is something that like you normally can't do with other gas blowback rifles. You know, you really have to be careful with how you play with it during the winter months, especially with green gas. Forget about it. Some companies will release CO2 magazines where you could just put 1 cartridge. It does help, but you're not going to be able to prolong your play as long as running two cartridges at once. So that's pretty cool. Now, some of you guys might be wondering, hey Boaz, is it possible for you to put an aftermarket NPAS unit or some kind of variable valve inside the bolt carrier group on this SR4? As of now, no, but the pressure is actually going to be regulated not through the nozzle here on the SR4, but it's actually regulated through the magazine. So this guy has a built-in regulator as well, but this is what kind of keeps it field legal, is that the magazine itself will regulate gas pressure. So it'll actually give you a lot more better consistency throughout the magazine. So very nifty, very well designed, pretty hefty, I would say. The KLI SR4 gas blowback rifle chronos in at about 370 to 380 feet per second using a 0.2 gram BB and 12 gram CO2 cartridges. It has a rate of fire of around 17 rounds per second at normal room temperature. Okay, so as promised, we're gonna take a look at the internal components here of the KLI SR4. These are some of the parts that we can show on camera. The lower parts, let's just say, they're very realistic, a very faithful recreation of the real thing. But what we can tell you from off camera is that we did a bit of a magnet test on the lower components, and it turns out that the hammer, the magazine release, and the trigger are going to be made out of steel. Pretty impressive. Now, if you're looking at all this, you're wondering, oh, like what aftermarket parts can you put into this? Sorry, you can't. Okay, so this is gonna be a proprietary design. Yes, I did say the airsoft no word, but for me personally, I don't mind airsoft guns being proprietary as long as they work well. So that's just my caveat, is I'll avoid proprietary stuff if it doesn't perform well. But the KLI SR4, from a testing through and through, this guy performs like a champ, and quite reasonably so. I mean, the parts that we're looking at here are pretty dang well made. So going into the bolt carrier group here, like I said before, completely made out of steel. Very hefty, heavier than any other bolt carrier group from an airsoft gas blowback M4 that I've held in my hands. This will kind of pretty much help give you a lot of that felt recoil when you're shooting this guy. But one thing that you'll notice is that the nozzle here is going to be made out of that polycarb plastic material. Now, this is important because the nozzle itself is what makes direct contact with your BB and the feed lips on your magazine. as a rule of thumb, I will always recommend against running a metal nozzle in your gas blowback airsoft gun. It causes a lot of problems in the long run, so it's good that KLI was looking out for the player and still stuck with that traditional plastic material used in your nozzle. So not only that, but this one thing is also very surprising. It's going to be the buffer itself. As you can see, I don't know if you can tell, but they put a generous amount of grease throughout all the internal components, which is great. So for gas blowback airsoft guns, use grease. Do not use oil, use grease. They will help lubricate way more effectively than silicone oil. So just keep that in mind. But the buffer itself is also extremely heavy, and this is also going to be made out of steel. And I haven't really noticed too much bolt bounce when cycling the SR4, so good on you, KLI. But also let's look at the buffer spring itself. This is a very long spring. This is probably one of the longest buffer springs that I've seen in a gas blowback M4. So for comparison here, I have 3 different internal components from 3 different gas blowback M4s. Up here on the top, you have my personal Tokyo Marui MWS gas blowback M4. In the middle is going to be the KLI SR4, and here on the bottom is going to be the KWA LM4. So right off the bat, just going off with the weight of the bulk carrier group, I would say, yeah, the Tokyo Marui MWS bulk carrier group weighs pretty much nothing. And this is with the inclusion of an aftermarket roller group over here on the rear of the bolt, just so that way I can add a little bit more heft to the bulk carrier group and have a bit more smoother cycling. But even with that, it weighs pretty much half of what the SR4 bolt weighs. And then I would say the closest thing would probably be the KWA LM4 bolt. This is also going to be a steel bolt as well, which is one of the reasons why KWA is like really famous for having a hard kicking LM4, is because of the steel bolt that it comes with. But I don't know what KLI did to their bolt. Even though both of the LM4 and the SR4 are going to be made out of steel, this guy is still significantly heavier than the KWA. So very impressive, KLI. Kudos to you. But let's take a look at the buffers themselves as well. So this is going to be a custom-made aluminum buffer that I had made from a tech buddy of mine. But this is heavier than the plastic stock buffer that it comes with on the TM, but it's still incredibly light compared to the KLI. Ooh, man, yeah, this guy's hefty because it's a steel buffer. Now, over here on the LM4, this is very interesting because a majority of this is going to be made out of polymer. And then you have a little bit of metal here on the front to give it a little bit of weight, but yeah, nowhere near close. This guy easily weighs more than both the KWA and the Tokyo Marui buffers combined. Having that steel bulk carrier long buffer spring, it is significantly longer than both the Tokyo Marui and the KWA, and the tension is way stronger too. Yeah, so that combination of parts over here is pretty much what you want to do if you want to have like a high recoil build, is that you would have a heavy bolt, strong and long buffer spring, and a heavy buffer. So it's really great to see that KLI is doing all of the right things basically right out of the box. Okay, so now we're going to talk about the performance of the KLI SR4. Now before we get into that, just need to do a quick little disclaimer here. If you're used to measuring the performance of AEGs and measure things like your trigger response and your rate of fire and things of that nature, you might have a difficult time seeing the performance benefits of running a gas blowback, because gas blowback rifle and an AEG, they're 2 different animals. So performance is going to be measured a little bit differently for an AEG compared to a gas blowback rifle. So number 1 is that, yeah, the gun kicks absolutely hard. It is probably the hardest kicking gas blowback rifle I've shot ever. This easily outkicks even M4s from like Western Arms, from GHK, from even KWA with their LM4, which is often regarded as a very good hard kicking M4. Yeah, this will trump that, no problem. Number 2 is the bolt lock. The bolt lock on this guy, the last round bolt hold open, is extremely reliable. That's one thing that we noticed when we're testing this guy. Every time that we shoot ammo, especially even when gas is starting to get low, the bolt will still lock back after every magazine, which is very nice. And also the hop up on this guy is pretty dang good, especially because of its like tried and true Western arms design. Yeah, it is a little bit inconvenient. You know, we all love to, you know, have quick access to the wheel, but because of how it's designed, it stays dialed in for extended periods of time. And also, you're able to really get some really good long range accuracy from this bad boy because of that tried and true Western arms hop-up design. Now, one thing that I need to recommend to you guys is that if you guys are going to be running a gas blowback rifle of any sort, especially with the KLI SR4, run 0.30 gram BBs minimum. All right, so you want to use heavier BBs on this bad boy to give you that really good long range accuracy. So this guy performs really well, not in the sense of, you know, basically like accuracy by volume, like what we do with AEGs, where you just dump tons of rounds down range. Is really good at just picking out, taking good precision shots at longer distances where AEGs generally tend to have their ranges drop off. Now that we've gone over everything about the KLI SR4, you're probably wondering how much this guy's gonna cost. But as of right now at airsoftgi.com, the KLI SR4 CO2 gas blowback M4 is retailing for $490 airsoftgi.com. So please make sure to take advantage of our Wombo Combo for automatic free shipping and reward store credit. Oh man, that's like almost $500. That's a pretty hefty price tag. But in relation to other gas blowback M4s out there of similar quality, I say this is pretty right smack dab middle of the road. For example, if you compare this to, let's say, a Tokyo-Marui MWS, the MWS stock is about $600 plus, and you also have to factor in things like reinforcing different parts and getting aftermarket upgrades, because the MWS was never designed to run on green gas, and so your lifespan of functionality is greatly diminished when you start running things like green gas. Something that I had to do with my personal MWS as well. I just had to start upgrading or reinforcing certain parts to have it run healthily over a long period of time. So it's definitely a lot more affordable than, let's say, running an MWS. And it is gonna be a little bit more expensive than, let's say, like the KWA LM4D, which is also another option, popular option, I guess. But in similar fashion, the KLI SR4 is going to be kind of like that you set it and you forget it kind of thing. It performs really well on its own. It's super fun to shoot. It kicks way harder than both the LM4D and the MWS, and you could run this guy in cold weather. I can't emphasize that enough. Like, being able to play with a gas blowback gun all year round is the dream, the dragon that all of us gas users have been trying to chase. You know, the fact that like we have to retire our gas blowback rifles during the colder months and switch over to AEGs, and then, you know, we get super happy that we're finally able to bust out a gas blowback rifle again when, you know, like the weather gets warmer. It kind of sucks. So being able to reliably run something all year round and having something that kicks this hard and performs this well out of the box is pretty insane. So why would you want to run a gas blowback rifle like this in the first place anyways? Well, it has to do with changing the way you play. Yeah, you know, it is fun tagging all of your opposing players with hundreds of BBs, you know, spamming the trigger like crazy and, you know, stacking kills that way. Yeah, it is fun. That's pretty much how I played for many years in the hobby. But over time, playing the same exact way gets very stale. In fact, in my personal collection, I don't really have any standard regular M4 AEGs. It's either electric recoil, electric blowback, or gas blowback at this point. And the reason why I've done that is because I got really bored of how I used to play Airsoft. Just running around and trying to trigger spam a bunch of people, you know, across the field, hoping that there'll be a lucky shot that'll hit them. You know, eventually that playstyle got super repetitive. And so stepping into the gas blowback territory of Airsoft really opened up my eyes to see how differently I could play the game on the field without having to, you know, constantly rely on dumping hundreds of rounds down range. Every time I pull the trigger, it feels super impactful. I love feeling the kick into my shoulder. I love the sound that it makes too. Just that clack-clackness of the Airsoft gun going off instead of like that buzzy whine that you get from a gearbox. I think for me, it feels more immersive. It feels more refined, I guess you'll say, of an experience compared to just trigger spamming on an AEG. So if you guys are, let's say, noticing that, you know, that your games are just not as fun anymore, you know, like the experience for you is getting a bit more stale, it's probably because you've been playing the same exact way over and over again. And so if you want to continue enjoying the hobby that is Airsoft, I highly encourage you guys to change your platform, change your system, and change the way that you play to keep the hobby enjoyable. And that's the number one reason why anyone leaves a hobby, is because it's gotten boring and stale for them, and they haven't really found new ways to enjoy the hobby. And so that's one thing that I've always liked to tell players throughout the years. If you want to play airsoft for a long time, if you love the hobby, I highly recommend you guys to look for new ways to enjoy the hobby. And one of the big ways is to obviously go gas. So that about sums it up here. This has definitely got to be one of the most shocking, I guess, like airsoft gun overviews that we've done in a while. I'm pretty blown away with how realistic this KLI SR4 is, and I can't believe we've been sleeping on it for so long. So if you guys are interested, make sure to check out the KLI SR4 at airsoftgi.com. And if you guys like what you're seeing, please make sure to hit that like button, subscribe, and to ring that bell icon to get notified every time we upload a new video. And if you want to directly support the channel, please head on over to airsoftgi.com for all your airsoft needs. It helps keep these lights on, helps keep the camera rolling. And there's tons of great new deals and new products that are hitting the shelves at airsoftgi.com every day, so make sure not to miss out. So my name is Boaz. I'll see you to catch you next time, Mayo Gang.